Welcome, guys. Man, so excited. Jeff Francoeur, Frenchie, as we all know him. Thank you for being on this episode of Happy Hour by Purpose on Tap. For Jeff, really quick, and for the listeners too, Happy Hour. We talked about Purpose on Tap, but give us what's Happy Hour, really quick.
Stan came to me. Stan's a very creative dude. He came to me and he was like, "Man, we need to do a podcast for Purpose on Tap."
I love it.
So many guys. We've had amazing speakers on over the years. We've had Foxworthy, Smoltzy, Paul Bird.
Yep.
We've had a bunch of great speakers, and guys come to us and they're like, "Hey, I wasn't able to come for whatever reason. Well, I wanted to hear the message," and we really haven't had an outlet for that.
Yeah.
We have some on YouTube, but audio and whatever. And so
I've been following.
We're like,
I'm locked in now.
Oh, let's go. Okay, sweet. Jeff Francoeur, huge Purpose on Tap guy.
There you go.
I am. I watched a lot of the clips, and Birdie, of course. You know, Birdie just brings it, man.
He brings it. But Stan came to me and he was like, "Hey, let's do a podcast and kind of do a before, and let's call it Happy Hour."
Yep.
Like before the act.
Because everybody loves happy hour.
Loves Happy Hour. We're not
right.
drinking beer, but we're hanging out.
Who knows
So,
what's in that cup?
You never know. But anyway, so we just wanted to kind of have a loose environment where we can tell our guys, "Hey, we clipped up a thing."
Yeah.
And we had a more loose, in-depth conversation. And so Stan's been rocking and rolling with it.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I for me, I have my own podcast that we're doing with Pure Athlete, but I mean, I'll be honest, in the car now, I listen to podcasts all the time. I mean, that's honestly, if
Working
my kids
out.
aren't in the car, then who knows what I'm listening to, but without them, I'm listening to different stuff. It's just a good way to get info and so many good different quotes they cut up now.
For sure.
100%.
Jeff, so with that being said, man, it's the off season.
Yeah.
How are you spending your time? Are you making breakfast for the kids? What's going on in the French?
So the wife does breakfast.
Okay.
You know, I'll be honest, it's so funny because you have people that are more like, dude, I'm not a morning person.
Okay.
I'm a night owl. I'm up till 12:30 every night.
Okay.
And it's just through baseball, that's what we did. I didn't go to bed till 1:30.
Yeah.
Right.
And so my wife gets up, gets to breakfast. Now I drive them at 7:30.
Okay.
So I roll out of bed about 7:20, put slippers on. My kids are up at Buford. So we live out there. And I honestly, man, I've gotten to where I've done a really good job of saying no to things now. I used to have the worst time. Dude, I was speaking here, doing this, and I was taken away from time with my kids and my family. So now I'm very kind of picky and choosy what I do.
Yeah.
So I've really, man, like last night we had family dinner. We decorated the trees, watched Elf.
Nice.
And so doing a lot of just being at home and being in the moment because, I got 4, 11, 9, 6, and 4. And it's like that time's already gone fast.
Yeah.
Well, dude, we're honored that you chose to pick this.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I love, and honestly, I try to, like, what y'all are doing is very important to me. And, I think getting men involved in obviously wanting them to get to know Christ, but also getting them in the community, getting them in groups, like we're meant to be together.
100%.
And I know for me, I've been in a small group now since 2007.
Wow.
Same guys.
And well, different. I actually went and led a group, and now the last year we started a brand new group, and it's just fun getting to know, digging deep with guys. It's what it's all about.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. All right.
So good.
So 4 kids. You've been married for how long?
Been married 17 years,
Okay.
but we've known each other since 3rd grade.
Okay, I was about to ask this. I did some digging. Wikipedia, I don't know if you read your Wikipedia, but it does say you met your wife in the 3rd grade.
Yep, and she would not date me till my senior year because she said I was too cocky.
Okay, I was about to say.
And I'm not gonna lie to you, looking back, I probably agree with her on some things. I always said it was more confidence,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, we've known each other a long time.
Wow.
That's great.
So one thing I wanted to ask was, especially as a ball player, you traveled a lot. What were some ways how did you intentionally protect your marriage while you were on the road?
It's a great question. So we never went more than 4 days without seeing each other.
Okay.
So if we had a 7, 8 day road trip, she made sure she was either coming on the front end, back end. And even when we had kids, my last 3.5 years in the big leagues, like she was very intentional about bringing them. But she was also, what I always said, she was so good at, is also knowing like in the morning, she'd grab them and go get breakfast, take them, if we were in Miami, take them to the pool for an hour so I could sleep. Like she knew that was my job.
Yeah.
And she just wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And wanted the kids involved. And so I always appreciated that about my wife.
That's
That's
awesome.
great, man.
What are some ways you're protecting your marriage right now, even this season of life?
Just honestly, just being home a lot, being together. I say it now, you get to, and no one's ever like battle-proof from it because the Satan's going to attack you so many different ways. But I feel like with 4 kids and all the crap we have, I don't have a lot of time for other stuff. But with that being said, I mean, like me being in the small group that I am, having accountability guys, having guys that, every once in a while, like my small group, it's actually funny. We have Find Our iPhones.
Yeah.
And so all 6 of us can always know where each other are at.
That's cool.
And, and we're different places because everybody works and has different jobs, but just little things like that I think help you.
Yeah. So the kids are fairly young.
Yep.
Like what's the season of life you feel like, what's the stage of parenting you feel like you're in with the kids?
I feel like with our oldest 2, we finally got to a point that we can breathe a little bit. And then the youngest 2, so we have girl, boy.
Okay.
And my 9-year-old boy, man, is very mature. It's more like my wife, a little more sensitive. My 4-year-old, unfortunately, is me. And I mean, like, I pick him up from preschool and we wrestle for 30 minutes every day.
Oh,
and
that's
so,
great.
but it is a lot because he is a handful, man.
Okay.
He does not want to be left behind.
Yeah.
He wants to go to everything. And so it's been a fun stage. Like any parent,
Yeah.
you have your nights where it's 9:30 and you're like, oh my God, can we move this forward? But at the same time, we have a lot of fun moments.
Yeah. That's cool. So kind of segueing into Pure Athlete, something that you've made as a resource for, I think, kids at this age and parents specifically. Talk to us a little bit about this. What was the impetus? How did it come to be?
It came to be that I started coaching my kids in youth sports and realized that there's some,
Parents
crazy parents out there.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear about this.
And so I was very lucky, man. I grew up with a mom and dad who pushed me, no doubt, but it was always what I wanted to do. I drove the ship as far as what sports I wanted to play. Now, my dad made me play every sport. So I played soccer. He even signed me up for ice skating lessons. I sucked. So it was like, Dad, I'm not going to be a hockey player. But I did them all, man. And he was like, you're going to keep doing it until a certain age, and then you can kind of figure out, what you want to do. But there was always guardrails. And so I tell people all the time, like, I did not play baseball past July 1st. I was done. We went on a 2-week vacation every year down to the beach. Those were my mom's 2 weeks. She was like, I don't care what your coach says, you're going. And now looking back as a parent, God, I appreciate that so much, man, because we would go down there. We would take no bats, no, football. Now, we would throw on the beach, have fun and do that stuff, but we were just kids for 2 weeks. And as a family, and then I'd get home and I'd start 2-a-days for football, and it would roll me into football. But then what I love about it is, and this is what people truly, they think I'm lying or can't believe, during football, I never touched a baseball bat.
Okay.
So, like, I was football when football season came.
Yeah.
And it's not like I went Sunday to the cages for an hour and a half and hit. Like, my dad's like, this is football season, do it.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate it because then once I did get to January and it was baseball season, like, I was all in, man. I was ready to go. I was ready to work every day. But I always had those breaks built in. And so the whole idea with youth sports, when we got into it, like, funny enough, Matt Ryan, I tried to get him to come on the podcast. He's a buddy of mine for like 6 months. And he kept saying, I'll do it later, or I'll do this. He started coaching his 5-year-old's flag football teams. And he called me, he's like, I'm coming on.
No way.
Dominated the conversation. I didn't even
already
tee
had
him
enough
up.
of it.
He went on
Matty Ice
and
was
just
ready
dug
to rock.
in.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny to me because every parent is so scared. This is what I hear all the time. Well, if my kid doesn't do this, they're going to be left behind. Bull crap.
Yeah.
And Davey Pollock was one of my favorites. Now, he's opinionated, and he's going to come on and let you know. But he said the greatest thing that I still tell, until you go through puberty, you have no idea what your kid's going to do.
Yeah.
How many kids did we all play with at 10, 11, 12 years old that were bigger, stronger? They struck everybody else out. They were better. They hit harder in football. They put you on your rear end in basketball. And then all of a sudden at 15, you're like, wait a minute, I'm blowing by this guy.
Yeah.
Because they didn't grow. They didn't work. All of a sudden I grew 6 inches.
Yeah.
And so we just want to bring awareness to parents of like, this should be fun. This should be a fun moment. Now, I try to divide it into 3 categories. The developmental category, which is like until 5th grade, your kid should just be developing. Play a travel team, I don't care. But make sure they're playing, make sure they're developing, make sure they have good coaching. Then that middle school where they're starting to transition through puberty. And it's like now, you might got to push them a little more. You might have to say, hey, we're going to the cages. I don't care whether you want to or not. And then the high school aspect, which is I call in the all-in. At that point, if you're a sophomore, junior in high school, and you feel like, you know what, I need to go to California for this showcase because it might help me, I'm okay with it. Go. Like, you make that decision as a family. But what I tell people then is in high school, kids are going to tell the parents, I either want to do it or I don't. Mm-hmm. They're not going to waste 5 days going to some camp in California that they don't want to. So they'll drive the ship at that point, right? They'll be like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just trying to let parents know. And, you know, it's so funny because you get these parents go, oh, Bryce Harper. I'm like, there's always outliers, right? Yeah. There's Tiger Woods, there's Serena Williams, there's Bryce Harper. They do it and they're studs. But you know what? Your kid's not Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell them. Your kid's not Serena Williams.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had one dad, a basketball dad, was funny. He's like, he kept arguing with me.
Yeah.
And I try not to. I'm not on social media, on X or any of that. I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
But I don't argue much with people. This dad my kids played basketball since he was 10 years old, and that's the only sport. And now he's a freshman in high school, and he's getting all these looks. Well, then all of a sudden, one day, we just were going back and forth, and I was kind of disagreeing. And the dad says, well, my son's 6'10". And I'm like, well, no crap.
Yeah.
God designed your son to play basketball, all right? So you should have told me that from the get-go, and we would have been done with it, right? Like, your son's not going to be a good football player.
Right,
like, he's 6'10", 200 pounds. So I laugh because these parents want to fight you on it, but I'm like, let your kid have fun, man. The parents are killing sports for these kids.
Are you allowing parents to call in and ask you questions
Absolutely.
about that?
That's what I want, dialogue.
Love it.
I coach my kids all the time, and I tell the parents, I'm like, if I can help your daughter or if I can help your son, come to me and tell me. I'll help them any way. But don't be in the stands gossiping. Don't be like, you know, another thing we talk about is having self-awareness.
Yeah.
This parent, oh, my kid. No, your kid sucks. Let's be honest. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to, but your son is not better than that kid there. Now, that could flip, right? We talk about it, and that's what Mark DeRosa, I love on the podcast, talked on when he came on and said, there's a team for every kid, right? Yeah. Like, you don't have to be on the best team. Go where your kid can get playing time. Go where he can get mound time. Go where they can make it on the volleyball team and keep playing.
Yeah.
You know, all these parents want their kids to play on the best team.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? I can go buy you a ring off Amazon for $4.99 if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Totally. 100%.
Kills me.
No, that's awesome. What's I know you said you had a really good experience with your parents growing up playing sports, but like, what's something different that you're trying to do with your kids as a parent now?
I'll tell you this. The one thing I'm doing that my dad, and it's funny because we had numerous fights on the car ride home.
Yeah. Okay.
If my kids bring it up, I will enter into it with them on the car ride home. If not, I won't say a word.
Okay.
And me and my dad, man, we had many brawls on the way home in the car ride home, right? And I think if you'd actually talk to him now, he would probably change that some too.
Okay.
But like, you know, fresh off a basketball game and you're 1 for 10 from the free throw line, what good is it going to be for you to get in there right away with your kid and be like, man, you know, you got to do this.
Yeah.
You will have time to enter into that. And so I tell especially my 2 oldest now, because they're 11 and 9 and they understand it. I tell them, like, if you want to digest stuff on the way home and talk, I'm here. Like, I will. But if you just want to go home and you want to wait till the next day, I'm great with that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've done a better job with that. I think early on, with my daughter, I'd get in the car right away. God, how did you swing at that pitch? You know, and this and that. And it's so funny as you start walking through this, it's easier to get to them. And now it's great. My daughter has great self-awareness, man, because of how I've parented. Last year, I coached her softball team. She was 10 at that time, but she had 2 great terms to start the year. And then we went to a 3rd tournament. She was brutal. I mean, it was tough to watch.
Yeah.
And we get in the car, and it was so great because I didn't even say a word. She was like, man, did I suck today. And I'm like, praise Jesus that she understood that, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't love her. Doesn't mean we didn't go get dinner and get ice cream. But it's like, I'm glad she was aware, like, I didn't play well.
Yeah.
And so we could build from that. Let's work on it. We got a couple things we got to work on this week. And she came back 2 weeks later and did really well.
That's awesome because you can help build a resilient kid, I think, through that type of dialogue.
Absolutely, because you got to be careful. I tell parents it's not positive reinforcement all the time. Like, your kid at 10, 11 doesn't need to hear, like, you did great when you didn't. It's like, you know, but did you have fun? Did you try hard? Dan Orlovsky, who I really enjoy on ESPN, he had a good one on there. He said, coach your kids in the tangibles. Coach your kids in effort, attitude, were you a good teammate? Because those are things you can control, right? Like if you don't hustle, when you get in the car, I will rip you. Like we'll have issues. But if you tried, I know my kid cared, I know they were being a good teammate, and you didn't play well, that's going to happen. That's fine.
That's good.
That's great. So in thinking in the theme of resilience and even failure, let's talk about your career a little bit. Like what were some ways that you dealt with, if you were in a slump, for example, like mentally, how are you trying to process that and get past it? Like, did you want to talk to anybody about it? Like, how were you processing in terms of?
If there's one thing I could have changed about my career,
Yeah.
I would have failed a lot sooner than I did.
Okay.
I was lucky. I never had adversity, man. In high school, we were 30-0 my junior and senior year in football. In baseball, we were like 35-2 and 34-1 my senior year. Like, I didn't fail.
Yeah.
So I got to the minor leagues, and you had a few slumps here and there, but still, I had a pretty easy path. I got called up at 21. Was on the front of Sports Illustrated. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Is like the first time I really hit adversity, I didn't know how, I didn't have the tools to deal with it. And so one thing we talk a lot on that is these kids learning, right? Like we're too quick to bail our kids out. And like they got to feel pain. They need to feel some consequences. They need to know what it's like. And when they know that and then can overcome it, there's no better feeling.
Yeah.
Like they will know we have worked through something to get to the other side.
Yeah.
And so I go back to my career and I'm like, I wish I had the tools. I used to say, man, the first big slump I went to in Atlanta, man, I'd go get my hair cut and I'd listen to the barber tell me how to hit. Hey, I think you should do this, and I'd be like, man, maybe he's got a point, instead of listening to that circle. But I never really failed much.
Yeah.
And so I didn't understand how to work through adversity.
Okay.
How would you have failed more?
Huh?
How would you have failed more? If you could go back and do it again.
I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I wish I did have some bad games where I needed to be like, oh God, but I didn't.
Interesting.
Let's talk about and kind of staying on this, so your faith. What are some ways that you were trying to impact teammates in the clubhouse, just as a professional?
I'm going to talk about it tonight. My best witnessing, and that's why I love that we're going to be having some beers tonight, because my best way to witness people was at the hotel bar.
Okay.
So I love whiskey.
Yeah.
I'm a Jack Daniels guy.
All right.
And so after every game, my teammates knew that I would go back to the hotel bar and I was going to have 2 Jack and Gingers.
Okay.
And it was about an hour and 15. I would just digest. But then I always went up to the room after that. They knew I wasn't going out. They knew I wasn't doing this. But that was my thing. And I made more relationships with guys. Guys that some days, they didn't want to hear about Christ, or they didn't want to, but they knew I cared about them.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten calls from these guys years later.
Yeah.
And they've come to know Christ, or something's happened in their life. And maybe they're not believers yet. Hey, will you pray for me? And it's cool to see that, because it's like, that's where I built relationships with these guys, man. And that was my place to win. And I used to struggle with that, because I remember Randy Pope, who was the head of Perimeter Church for 40 years, and I love that man to death. But he always told me, he's like, you got to meet people where they're at, man.
Yeah.
And for you, you're not in my business. You're not a pastor. I'm meeting most people at church when they're broken and they're believers.
Yeah.
He's like, you're meeting guys that are millionaires and stuff, but majority of them are broken. But you're being able to meet them in a different place. And so that was kind of always how I ended up being able to reach out to these guys. And when they knew I cared about them, whether I was a leader, I could get on to them in the clubhouse. I could give them a kick in the butt if I needed to. But I could also come behind them because they knew I cared about them.
Yeah, I think that's so pivotal to just kind of meet, like Randy said, meet people where they're at, to create that common ground.
I mean, think about your life. The people that you've been able to impact, they knew you cared first.
Yeah.
And then it's no different than a coach, right? If you have a good coach and you know he cares, you can get on him.
Who was the most meaningful or most influential manager in your career?
It's funny. From a standpoint of baseball, Bobby Cox was the greatest, man. I mean, he knew how to just love on you, motivate. Now, we never heard him yell at a player like in front of people after a game. Now, we used to laugh because he acted like we couldn't hear. Sometimes he would slam his door, and dude, you would hear 15 F-bombs coming from that thing. You know, but then it was so great because he'd come out 5 minutes later and be like, all right, boys, let's get them tomorrow night. You know, we're like, we know you think we stink right now, you know? But he had a way to instill confidence in you when you had zero confidence in yourself. And so from that standpoint, he was always best. And then Dayton Moore, who was the GM and president of the Kansas City Royals, he cared about the person, man.
Yeah.
And it was, you know how many times you'd be bad and you'd come in and you'd see him and it's like, hey, Jeff, how's your family? How's Katie? How are the kids? And it just showed a different side, right? And sometimes it's good in baseball because I tell people all the time, the greatest players fail 70% of the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know how hard that is?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so, you know, I think I had two really good leaders there. They taught me, you know, I tell people all the time about leadership, man. I think leaders do three things great more than anything. Number one, they move on. They don't dwell on the past. Someone made a mistake, who cares? Let's go get it tomorrow. I said, number two, they embrace change. And God knows in this everyday world that's changing, social media, the new generation, how to meet with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about my 9-year-old son knows how to use my phone better than I do.
Yeah.
God honest truth, like completely knows how to use my better. So embrace change. And number three, I tell him my last one, willing to fail, man. You got to be able to try things or go out there. What's the worst that's going to happen? You strike out.
So there's a story with Bobby. I think you were trying to get to a tee time.
Tiger Woods, it's the greatest story I ever had.
Tell us that story for the listeners.
So, you know, I'd got to play with Tiger one time.
Yeah.
It was the coolest experience of my life. I mean, I'm a golfer, so I play. Like people ask me, do I hunt? I'll be playing with Brian McCann tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Like we got to stand in tee time. I take the kids to school. I golf.
Yeah.
And so I loved golf, and I was only 22 years old.
Okay.
So I'd come off a huge rookie year.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a veteran or anything. So we were playing the Yankees in a spring training game, and Smoltzy said, hey, this was the day before, Tiger wants to play 27 with us tomorrow at 150. And I'm like, dude, I can't go ask Bobby. I'm 22 years old. So we're out of team stretch that day, and of course Smoltzy said something to him. And so Bobby comes over to me, he's like, dude, why didn't you tell me you had the chance to play with Tiger today? I'd have given you the afternoon off. And I'm like, Bobby, I'm not doing that, dude. He's like, how about this? In 2 days, we got to go to Bradenton, Florida, and they had the worst infield. So he never wanted to take Chipper for Call, any of the big, he didn't want to get him hurt. So he's like, I need out, because you have to have 3 starters on a spring training trip.
Okay.
Each team has to take it. So Bobby was like, how about this? If you go to Bradenton, I'll let you out of this game today, but the lineup's turned in, all this. He said, so after your first at bat, wherever you are, just call time and act like your ankle's hurt. So,
Dude, that's unbelievable.
like I do, because I swing at the first pitch a lot, ground it out, ran through first. I get down there, I start doing my ankle, you know, and Bobby waddles out there, dip spit flying everywhere, and, you know, points to my ankle. And the thing was, the best was the trainer actually said, he said, dude, you have to limp to the dugout. Because I was ready to sprint off and go. So the moment I hit underneath where I knew no fans could see, dude, I sprinted up the tunnel. I didn't shower. I threw my golf clothes on. Allworth was 15 minutes from Orlando at Wild World Sports. So I got there literally at like 1:52. And they were out in the one fairway. It was Adam LaRoche, Smoltzy, and Tiger. Wow. And I hit my tee shot. The guy, we played 27 holes, had dinner out on the patio. And probably on like hole 14, my wife texted me, and it was she was my fiance at the time.
Yeah.
Texted me, and it was like Francoeur day-to-day with ankle sprain.
That is
So then the next day, the greatest part was I couldn't even practice because I had to act like my ankle was hurt. So I stood in the training room all day having a spa day.
Oh my god.
And they had to go to Bradenton. But I'm like, when people ask me, I'm like, that's why Bobby was the greatest, dude.
That's awesome.
That is epic.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a couple minutes here.
We got to go soon.
I want to quickly ask you about broadcasting. Like, what was the idea to even
Dude,
get
I had
into it?
zero idea.
Okay.
I had no idea I wanted to do it.
Was there somebody that pushed you or gave you the idea for this?
So the Phillies announcer, Tom McCarthy, who's one of my favorites, man.
Yeah.
I know the Braves hate the Phillies more than anything in the world, but it's a great organization, Rand, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And he was so great. And he told me in 15 when I was in Philly, he's like, dude, I think you'd be good at this. He's like, you have a great personality. You see the game great. You're a good mixture of the analytics that some people like, but you also can explain the game to people in a dumb way that they understand.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that a compliment or is that, you know? But so when I got done, I mean, I thought I was going to play another couple of years. I really did. And the calls just didn't come.
Yeah.
and I had one call from Oakland. And my wife, who went everywhere with me, was like,
Not
peace,
there.
I ain't going. We had 2 kids. She was pregnant with a third. She's like, I ain't going out there.
That's so good.
And so all of a sudden I was like, and the Braves, actually, guy called me. He's like, if you don't play this year, would you want to do some games?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I never thought about it, but, and the right set didn't come. And so I just got into it, and dude, within 2 years, I was doing the playoffs for
Yeah.
TBS. And it's
So cool.
And you're doing
it was awesome.
job.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
And it's a good,
you can tell.
it allows me to be home with the family
Yeah.
and coach my kids and do this, but
Yeah.
still be involved in the game that gave me everything.
Was there always something in your mind that you were going to step away at some point when the kids got to a certain age, or did something
Absolutely.
happen?
We waited purposely 7.5 years to have kids
Okay.
because I wanted to be home. Played with a lot of guys, man, and I'm not going to name them, but
Yeah.
that had kids that were 14, 15. They never got to see them play. They
Yeah.
never got to coach. And I'm like, I am who I am because my dad was there all the time. My mom was there all the time. And I'm like, I'm doing that for my kids.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And so that's why last year, after doing 110 Braves games for 5 years, I took a step back and
Yeah.
I was like, it was tough, but
Yeah.
it was also the easiest decision I ever made.
Yeah,
Man, I coached my kids all spring last year.
It's awesome.
That
All
is
right,
so
so
great.
rapid fire will end with this.
Yep.
A couple questions, just first answers that come off the top of your head. Toughest pitcher to face?
Roy Halladay, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Passed away. Dude, that guy was
Okay. All right, Roy Halladay. Most memorable on-field blunder of your
in
career?
Philly by far. I don't know if you've ever seen it in 2015.
Okay.
There's a ball hit down the right field line, and I tried to throw it twice, and it came out of my hand, went backwards. And you can imagine in Philly,
They
I
were not
wasn't
happy.
getting the fans I had about 40 F-bombs thrown at me. And
my
the worst
gosh.
part of that is we won that game 3-2, and I hit a 2-run homer off Steven Strasburg, and it never gets talked about.
Oh my God.
Just the backwards throw.
It was horrible.
All right. As Max Fried pitched his last game as a Brave.
Yes.
Okay. Who's going to win World Series in 2025?
If the Braves can stay healthy and shore up some of the things, they're in a small list of, I think, 3 or 4. Dodgers.
Yeah.
Always good.
The thing is, I look at it like, again, I think the World Series champs coming out of the National League again.
Yeah.
I think you have the Phillies, the Mets, the Braves, the Dodgers, and the Padres again.
Yeah.
Any one of those
Yeah.
5 teams can win it.
Totally agree.
All right. Favorite restaurant in Atlanta?
Favorite restaurant in Atlanta?
Great question.
So I'll say 2. I
Okay.
love. It's called 141 Italian,
All right.
and it's up on by Perimeter in Johns Creek. It is so great.
Okay.
Best wine, best Italian sausage.
Yeah.
It's great. And then I love Umi in Buckhead.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
That's me and my wife every year for our anniversary. St. Regis and Umi.
Okay.
I love it.
All right, that's a
I
good
love
one.
it.
All right. Favorite outside of Atlanta? Favorite major league city?
Chicago.
All right.
In the summer.
Yeah.
But
Can't
I'm
beat
there
that.
in the summer. Remember, I don't go in
All
January.
right. All right. Where'd you like playing better, the Braves or the Mets?
Braves, for sure. But I will tell you, man, playing in New York
Yeah.
is fun.
Okay.
Believe
It's fun.
Okay. Last question I'll leave you with it, or we'll ask you is greatest baseball player ever?
Greatest baseball player ever? God, man, I'm probably going to get roasted in a way for this because some people, but Barry Bonds.
Okay.
it. Interesting.
When I talk to Tom Glavine, John Smoltz,
Yeah.
Greg Maddux, and they all
Yeah.
tell me he's the greatest hitter they've ever
Yeah.
seen, like truly. And people forget Barry Bonds was 500 home runs before he started taking all the steroids.
Yeah.
it's
All
sick.
right.
It's sick.
Last question.
Great question.
Last question.
Yep.
Favorite scripture?
Favorite scripture, I got it right here, Joshua 1:9.
All
Have I
right.
not commanded you, be strong, courageous, do not be discouraged or afraid, for I am the Lord your God and will be with you wherever you go.
Amen.
There's a good story behind
Love
it.
All
that.
right. What's the story?
Well, I got hit in the face when I was 20 years old,
Okay.
by 96. I'll be sharing it tonight. And
Yeah.
I was in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I had 7 hours worth of surgery. I have a plate here,
Wow.
shattered my hour. And that's the verse my mom read to me
Amen.
every day in the hospital.
It's a good way.
Wow.
Mama Francoeur. I mean,
Huge.
Yep.
yeah, it's amazing. All right, Jeff,
Let's
thank
roll.
you so much for joining
Awesome.
the podcast.
Thank you,
Excited for
guys.
tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.